The wind howled like a living thing, tearing at the wooden frame of the trading post with relentless fury. Keshin sat by the window, watching sheets of rain obliterate the horizon, his fingers wrapped around a warm cup of spiced tea. He had been stranded here for 3 days now, waiting for the storm to pass so he could continue his journey to the northern markets. The post was nearly empty this time of year. Just old Meridian, who ran the supply counter, and a handful of travelers too stubborn or too desperate to seek shelter elsewhere. The sound came, suddenly, cutting through the storm's roar, 3 sharp knocks on the heavy oak door. Keshin didn't look up immediately. Travelers were hardy folk, accustomed to the elements. But something in the rhythm of those knocks was different. Desperate, frantic, almost fragile. Meridian shuffled from the back room, grumbling about the weather and the foolishness of anyone wandering in such conditions. Keshin watched as the old man pulled open the door, and the wind surged inward with a scream of fury. But what caught Keshin's full attention was the figure silhouetted against the lightning-torn darkness. She was soaked through, her form nearly impossibly thin beneath the dripping fabric of her clothes. Her skin had an iridescent quality to it, catching the lamplight like moonlight on water distinctly not human. But it was her eyes that made Keshin set down his cup. They were wide with terror and something else, something like hopelessness. And she wasn't alone. A small child, no more than 8 years old, huddled against her legs, shaking violently. "Please," the woman said, her voice cracking on the single word. "We need shelter, just for tonight. We have nothing to trade, but please, my brother is so cold, and I don't know how much longer." Meridian's weathered face hardened. He began to close the door. "Wait," Keshin said, surprising himself. He was on his feet before he consciously decided to move. "Meridian, let them in." The old man turned, one eyebrow raised. "Those are aliens, boy." "We don't. I know what they are," Keshin interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "And I'm asking you to let them in anyway." Something in his tone must have carried weight, because Meridian, after a long moment, stepped aside. The woman and child stumbled into the trading post, both of them dripping water onto the warm wooden floor. Up close, Keshin could see just how emaciated they were. The woman looked like she might collapse at any moment, and the boy, her brother, was barely conscious, his skin taking on an alarming grayish hue. "Bring them to the back room," Keshin said, already moving. "Meridian, we have extra blankets, don't we?" The old man muttered something under his breath, but complied, disappearing into the storage area. Keshin led the woman and her brother toward the warmth of the main room, where a fire crackled in the stone hearth. Up close now, he could see the intricate patterns that decorated her skin, not markings, he realized, but natural striations that shifted subtly with her movements, like oil on water. "Thank you," she whispered, sinking down beside the fire. She pulled her brother close, cradling his small frame against her body. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Keshin felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. In his 28 years, he had done many things, traveled across continents, traded with merchants from a dozen different cultures, even stood up to bandits on the mountain passes. But he had never felt quite like this, like something fundamental inside him was shifting. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling down to carefully assess her brother's condition. The boy was feverish, but otherwise seemed to be in marginally better shape than his sister. "Venica," she said softly, "and this is Taven, my brother." "I'm Keshin," he smiled gently. "You're safe now. The storm won't last forever." Meridian returned with an armful of blankets, and Keshin set about the task of warming them carefully, wrapping Taven first in layers of soft fabric before turning to Venica. She flinched when he approached, her luminous eyes wary, but she didn't pull away Dot as he draped the blanket around her shoulders. Their hands brushed, and Keshin felt that same strange sensation again, a pull magnetic and undeniable. Venika's breath caught slightly, and he wondered if she felt it too. "Where were you traveling to?" he asked, moving to the stove where Meridian had heated water. "Away," Venika said simply. "It doesn't matter where, just away." Keshin prepared a warm drink with herbs and honey, and he helped Venika guide the cup to Taven's lips. The boy drank weakly, then seemed to settle slightly. Venika watched her brother with an intensity that spoke volumes. She loved this child fiercely, completely, without reservation. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to," Keshin said quietly, settling onto a stool across from her. "But if you need help, if there's something I can do." "Why?" Venika asked. Her voice was steady now, though her eyes still glowed with fear. "Your friend wanted to turn us away. Most would have. Humans and aliens don't help each other. That's the rule." Keshin considered the question seriously. Why indeed? He could offer her the easy answers, that he believed in basic decency, that he hated injustice. But the truth was more complicated. Something about her, about the strength and desperation, and fierce love radiating from her, made him want to break every rule. "Maybe I'm just tired of the rules," he said finally. Ven Ika studied him for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted. Her fear seemed to recede just slightly, replaced by something that might have been the beginning of trust. "Thank you," she whispered. "Keshin, thank you for seeing us." Outside, the storm raged on, indifferent and absolute. But inside the trading post, in the warmth of the firelight, two very different people began to orbit each other's gravitational fields, drawn together by compassion and something neither of them could yet name. 5 days had passed since the storm, and the weather had finally broken. Golden sunlight now streamed through the windows of the trading post, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. Keshin should have left by now. His business in the northern markets waited for no one, and Meridian had made it abundantly clear that he was uncomfortable with Venika and Taven's extended stay. But Keshin remained. Tavin had recovered remarkably well. The fever had broken on. The second night, and the boy now spent his time exploring the trading post's limited inventory, asking endless questions about human objects and words. He had become particularly attached to Keshin, following him around like a small shadow, practicing his halting human words. Venika watched this budding friendship with obvious relief and something else, something that made her eyes soften when she looked at Keshin. This morning, Keshin found Venika sitting alone on the wooden bench outside the trading post, her iridescent skin catching the light. He brought 2 cups of tea with him, and she accepted hers without protest. They had begun to fall into these quiet moments, comfortable silences punctuated by careful conversation. "You should go," Venika said softly, not meeting his eyes. "Your business, your life. You can't stay here forever." "Why not?" Keshin asked, settling beside her. Not too close, but close enough that he could feel the subtle warmth radiating from her body. "Because it's not safe," Venika said, her voice dropping lower. "For you, for us. Staying in one place too long draws attention." Attention from who? Venika was quiet for a long moment. Then she set down her cup and turned to face him fully. Her luminous eyes were troubled, filled with a conflict that suggested she was warring with herself over whether to trust him with the truth. "My people," she finally said. "There are enforcement officers who hunt those like us, those who have been cast out, who have broken certain laws. My family," she paused, her hands clenching into fists. "My family was involved in something the government didn't approve of. Resistance, trying to change unjust taxation laws. When the authorities discovered it, they marked us all as criminals. Taven and I managed to escape, but only barely." Keshin listened carefully, not interrupting. This was Venika offering him a piece of herself, trusting him with dangerous knowledge. There are also humans who have sympathies toward the old ways, she continued, who believe that aliens shouldn't be allowed in certain territories. They work with the government sometimes, turning us in for rewards. Rowan, Keshen said quietly. It wasn't a question. Rohen was the local official who made weekly rounds through the trading post. He was a thin, sharp-faced man with calculating eyes and a predatory smile. Keshen had noticed him watching Venica with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Venica's head jerked up. You know him? He was here yesterday, Keshen said. He asked Meridian about new travelers, specifically about any aliens who might be seeking refuge in the area. Meridian said we hadn't seen anyone. Fear flashed across Venica's face. We have to leave. Tonight, if we can. I shouldn't have stayed this long. I'd put you both in danger, Venica. Keshen reached out and gently took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her deliberately, with intention. Her skin was warm and slightly silken, the striations along her palm seeming to glow faintly. I'm not afraid of Rowan, and I'm not asking you to leave. You don't understand what you're saying, she whispered. If they find us here, if they discover that you helped us, they could— I know the risks, Keshen interrupted, and I'm choosing to take them. Venica's breath caught. Her luminous eyes searched his face, and Keshen saw the exact moment her resistance began to crumble. He saw it replaced by something more dangerous hope. They might have kissed then, right there in the morning sunlight. But Taven came running out of the trading post, his small face flushed with excitement. Keshen's sister. Meridian says there are travelers coming from the North Road. A whole caravan. Venica's expression shifted instantly, her moment of vulnerability locked away. But she held Keshen's hand for just a second longer before releasing it. The caravan that arrived shortly before noon was larger than usual for the season. A dozen merchants and their assistants, traveling with supplies, headed for the southern markets. They filled the trading post with noise and activity, and Keshen found himself grateful for the distraction and deeply concerned when he spotted Rowan emerging from the crowd. The official moved with a predatory grace that set Keshen's teeth on edge. His eyes scanned the interior of the trading post, and Keshen's heart sank when that gaze locked onto Venica, who was helping Meridian organize some stock in the corner. Keshen moved deliberately into Rowan's line of sight, forcing the man's attention to shift. Rowan, Keshen said, his voice friendly but his body language clearly territorial. Good to see you again. Rowan's thin lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Keshen, still here, I see. The storms must have been worse than usual. They were, Keshen agreed easily. But the roads should be passable now. I'm planning to leave tomorrow with the caravan, actually. It was a lie, smoothly delivered, and Rowan seemed to accept it. But the official's gaze kept drifting toward Venica, and Keshen found himself moving subtly to block his view whenever possible. That evening, after the caravan had made camp outside and the trading post had quieted somewhat, Keshen found Venica in the small room where she and Taven had been sleeping. The boy was already asleep, curled up under a mountain of blankets, his breathing deep and even. We need to talk, Keshen said quietly. Vnik, a gestured for him to follow her, and they slipped out into the cool night air. The stars overhead were impossibly bright, and Keshen found himself momentarily distracted by how the light reflected in Venica's eyes, making them seem to contain entire galaxies. Rowan suspects something, Venica said before he could speak. I could see it in the way he looked at me. We need to leave. We can travel with the caravan tomorrow, blend in with the other travelers. No, Keshen said firmly. That's the first place he'd look for you. Then what do you suggest? Venica asked, frustration and fear mixing in her voice. Because staying here isn't an option. Rohan will return, probably with official capacity to search the premises. And when he finds us, he won't find you, Keshen said. Because tomorrow, Meridian and I are going to tell him that you left during the night, heading east toward the mountain passes. We'll make it convincing. And then, where do we go? We have no resources, no way to support ourselves, and Taven is still recovering. Keshin took her hands in his, and this time he didn't let go. We go west. There's a settlement I know about, 3 days' journey from here. It's small, isolated enough that Rowan's authority doesn't extend that far. The people there don't ask many questions, and I have friends there who can help. We can get you and Taven new identification documents, a fresh start. We? Venica asked softly. You would come with us? I'm coming with you, Keshin said, and the certainty in his voice seemed to astonish her. Venica, he paused, searching for the right words. This was too fast, too intense, too everything. But it was also completely true. I can't leave you to face this alone. Tears formed in Venica's eyes, her luminous gaze growing bright. You barely know me. I know that you love your brother enough to risk everything for him, Keshin said. I know that you have a gentle heart, despite everything you've endured. I know that when I'm near you, everything else stops mattering except making sure you're safe. That's enough. More than enough. Venica reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. If we do this, if we run, they might never stop hunting us. Then we'll run together, Keshin said. And eventually, we'll find a place far enough away that the past can't touch us. He pulled her close, and this time when he leaned down, Venica didn't pull away. Their kiss was tentative at first, a question being asked and answered. Then it deepened, and Keshin felt like he was falling through space, weightless and terrified, and absolutely certain that this was exactly where he belonged. When they finally broke apart, Venica's forehead rested against his, her breathing shallow. Tomorrow we leave, she whispered. Tonight we have this. And in the shadows of that small room, with Taven sleeping peacefully nearby, and the weight of the world pressing down on them from all sides, Keshin and Venica held onto each other, like they were the only real things in a dangerous, shifting universe. The journey west had been difficult but uneventful. They traveled mostly at night, avoiding the main roads, following hidden paths that Keshin seemed to know by heart. Taven had adapted surprisingly well to the traveling lifestyle, though Keshin could see the toll it was taking on both siblings. Venica grew thinner each day, rationing her portions so Taven could eat more. Always watching the horizon with the wariness of a hunted animal dot, but with each passing mile, Keshin felt something shifting inside him. The desperate urgency of their flight was being replaced by something deeper, a sense of building permanence. He had begun imagining futures. Quiet lives in distant settlements, teaching Taven human languages, while Venica taught them about her world. Mornings waking beside her, evenings sitting by fires under alien stars. It was dangerous, this hope. But Keshin clung to it anyway. They reached the settlement of Westmark on the 7th day of travel. It was exactly as Keshin had described, small, isolated, nestled in a valley between mountain ranges. His friends there, a couple named Morton and Isle, who ran a small inn, welcomed them without question and provided rooms and hot meals. Venica's body seemed to relax for the first time since he'd known her. Though her luminous eyes still held a constant awareness of danger. It was on their 4th night in Westmark, when everything changed. Kes Ian was in the common room of the inn, reviewing the documents that Morton had arranged for them, when Isle appeared at his shoulder with an expression he couldn't quite read. There's someone asking for Venica, Isle said quietly. A woman, alien. She says she's family. Keshin's stomach dropped. He looked at Morton, who had gone pale, then made his way upstairs to the room where Venica was helping Taven prepare for sleep. He knocked twice, a signal they'd established, and Venica opened the door immediately. Her expression shifted when she read his face. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Someone's here to see you," he said. "A woman. She claims to be family." Venika's entire body seemed to go rigid. "No, that's impossible. No one from my family would." She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening. "Sephara. It has to be Sephara. Your sister?" "My older sister," Venika whispered. "She was always loyal to the government. We were never close. When everything happened with my family's resistance activities, Sephara publicly denounced us. I thought she'd never speak to me again." They found Sephara in a private room off the common area. She was taller than Venika, with the same luminous skin and striations. But where Venika's presence was gentle, Sephara radiated authority and power. She wore the formal robes of someone with significant standing, and her eyes, when they fell on Venika, were unreadable. "Sister," Sephara said, rising from her chair, "you look terrible. What are you doing here?" Venika asked, her voice trembling. "How did you find me?" "I have resources," Sephara replied. "And more importantly, I've been looking for you. For months, Venika. Do you have any idea what your disappearance has done to our family? Our mother has been ill with worry. Our father has aged 10 years. Even I—" She paused, and for just a moment, genuine emotion flickered across her controlled expression. "Even I have been concerned." Taven had followed them downstairs, and now clung to Venika's side, regarding their sister with cautious eyes. Sethra's gaze softened when she looked at the boy. "You've been keeping him safe," Sephara observed. "That's good. That's what matters. Why are you really here?" Venika asked, and Keshen could hear the trembling in her voice, a mixture of hope and dread. Sephara gestured for them to sit, and after a moment's hesitation, they did. Keshen and Isle remained standing. Observers to this reunion, it felt increasingly fragile. "The government has a proposition," Sephara said carefully, "for you and Taven. There's been a reassessment of your family's crimes. Certain individuals have argued that the punishment was too severe, that circumstances warrant a review. If you return home, if you make a public statement expressing remorse for your family's resistance activities, they will restore your citizenship. You could have lives again. Real lives with legitimacy and protection." Venika's hands trembled. Keshen watched as she looked down at Taven, who gazed back at her with the absolute trust of childhood. "What about Taven?" Venika asked. "He was just a child when everything happened. He didn't choose any of this." "Taven would be included," Sephara confirmed. "You both would be given full amnesty. You could live in the capital again, near family. Your mother could see you. This can all end, sister. The running, the fear, the hiding. It can all be over." Keshen felt something cold settle in his chest. He recognized the power of what Sephara was offering. Security, belonging, a return to the world Venika had lost. Everything that he, a human, could never truly provide. Venika looked at him then, her luminous eyes searching his face. "What do you think?" She whispered. It was the hardest question anyone had ever asked him. "I think," Keshen said carefully, "that you should do what's right for you and Taven. Your family, your people, your world, those are important. You shouldn't have to choose between them and me. Is that what you really think?" Venika asked, standing and moving toward him. "Or is that what you think you should say?" Sephara watched this exchange with an expression that suggested she was reassessing her understanding of the situation. "There's a human involved," she said, not unkindly. "Of course there is. Venika, these are complicated times. Relationships between our species, they're not forbiddens, exactly, but they complicated, difficult, looked upon with suspicion by many. If you return home, if you want to rebuild your life, you could have so much more than this." "And him?" Venica asked quietly. Then this, Sithara repeated. Then running and hiding and constantly looking over your shoulder. Venica turned back to Keshin, and he saw the internal war playing out behind her eyes. This was the moment he'd been dreading since the night they met. The moment when her world and his world would prove to be irreconcilable. I need time to think, Venica said finally. Where will you be? I'm staying at the Northern Inn, Sithara replied. I'll be here for 2 days. After that, I have to return home and report. If you want the government's offer, you need to come with me when I leave. After Sithara departed, Keshin and Venica retreated to the small room that had become their sanctuary. Taven had fallen asleep almost immediately, exhausted by emotion and travel. Venica stood by the window, staring out at the dark landscape beyond. Tell me not to go, she said softly. Tell me to stay with you, and I will. I know that much about myself now. If you ask me to stay, I will throw away everything, my family, my citizenship, my world, and I will stay. Keshin moved to stand behind her, not touching her, afraid that if he did, he wouldn't be able to let go. I can't ask you to do that. Why not? Venica turned to face him, tears streaming down her luminous face. You said you were choosing me. You said we would run together, that we would find a place where the past couldn't touch us. That hasn't changed, has it? Your feelings haven't changed? No, Keshin said. My feelings will never change. But Venica, listen to me. Your mother is ill. Your family is suffering. Your entire world is rejecting you. And now there's a path back. A way to reclaim everything that was taken from you. If I ask you to turn away from that, if you turn away from that for me, and then one day you look at me and wonder what you sacrificed. If you resent me for taking that choice away from you, I couldn't bear it. So this is goodbye, Venica whispered. No, Keshin said, and finally he pulled her close. This is me loving you enough to let you make the right choice for yourself. They spent that night holding each other, talking about the futures they would never have together. Keshin told Venica about the small cottage he'd always dreamed of owning, somewhere in the far north, where the sky held permanent twilight. Venica spoke of her family, of her mother's gardens, of a younger sibling she'd never properly known. They talked about Taven, about how he would thrive in civilization, how he deserved the chance to grow up in a world where he didn't have to run dot when dawn came. They both knew what Venica's choice had to be. Sithara arrived to collect them in the early afternoon. Venica packed their meager belongings with methodical precision, as if any distraction might break her resolve. Taven, sensing the weight of the moment, was unusually quiet dot at the door of the inn. Venica turned to Keshin one final time. I will never forget you, she said. Across all the stars, across all the distances between our worlds, I will carry you with me. In another life, in another world where things were different. In another life, Keshin interrupted softly, we would have all the time in the universe. But in this one, you have a family that needs you. That's what matters. That's what will matter when I remember this. He kissed her then, one last time, and tasted salt from both their tears. When they parted, Venica's eyes were filled with a grief so profound that Keshin had to turn away. He watched from the doorway as they climbed into Sethra's transport. He watched as they departed down the mountain road, heading back toward Venica's world, toward her family, toward a life that no longer included him. Taven's small face appeared in the rear window, and Keshin raised his hand in a wave the boy couldn't possibly see. Morton placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, the innkeeper said quietly. So am I, Keshin replied. But it was the only choice that made sense. As he turned to go back inside, Keshin allowed himself one final thought, that sometimes love meant knowing when to let go, and that the greatest gifts we could give to those we loved were our acceptance of their dreams, even when those dreams led them away from us and toward worlds we could never follow. It would take time, he knew, to stop feeling the weight of her absence. But he would carry this love with him, always a bittersweet reminder that connection transcended species, but that sometimes, tragically, it couldn't transcend the impossible demands of their separate worlds.